They don't know how to get excited about things. Well, me, ever since my operation, I'm just excited to still be alive. You know, when Denny brought me home from the hospital, I said, if we can beat cancer, we can beat anything. Do you know what he said to me? I'm Deborah Glassman, and I was born and raised in New York. I grew up in a suburb of New York City. I am the oldest of three. My parents still live there. As soon as I realized that there was a world outside the suburbs, I fled. I moved to New York City. Actually, I didn't. I lied. I went to college here in Philadelphia at UPenn and then moved back to New York City, but never wanted to move back to the burbs. I found them stifling and very homogeneous. And while I was at Penn, I decided that I was going to be a doctor. I had always loved the theater, but was really afraid to be unsuccessful and that I would be judged as not talented enough. So I applied to med school, moved back to New York, and went to school there at NYU. Well, after med school comes residency, and I moved to Baltimore. Not a big fan, but learned a lot about myself. I started practicing yoga at the very end of medical school and really developed my practice when I was in Baltimore, mainly as a form of exercise and stress relief, not really appreciating the spiritual side of it. I had grown up wanting to be a dancer in musical theater, and yoga seemed to be a good compromise of that. While I was, learning how to be a physician. Well, after Baltimore, my husband Adam, who I met in medical school, got a job here in Philadelphia, and we've been here ever since. A few years ago, I decided that I really wanted to learn more about the history, the philosophy of yoga, and to really deepen my practice. I had started to think of it less as a form of exercise and more as a lifestyle, I guess you could say. More than just a form of stress relief, but a way to really start to learn more about myself. And about 10 years ago, I got a teacher training, a 200-hour certified yoga teacher training, thinking, well, I'll use it in my medical practice because as a urologist, there's a lot of pelvic floor dysfunction. Yoga would be a good way to help patients access and manage that. Working with a lot of cancer patients, there's a whole lot out there about stress reduction in cancer patients. I thought, oh, this will be a good fit. And then a couple years after that, a friend of mine asked me to audition for a fringe show that she was coming up with called Yoga Stories. And I auditioned and I got in. And I think at that point, the theater bug came back. And I said, I have been missing this. I need to do this more. Well, life goes on. I have a couple kids. You get busy at work, you get busy as a parent, and well, I tabled it again. Although I continued my yoga practice and I continued to deepen it. Starting about a year ago, so I lost my train of thought because the memory card got full. But I think that I was talking about how I came to be where I am today, still practicing as a doctor, but also re-exploring the arts and yoga and how it all fits together. What I can say is that for a long time, I felt like I was in a transition and I really didn't know what it was about. But about a year and a half ago, I took a theater class. And about a year and a half ago, I decided that I was going to study theater and see what would happen. About 2 years ago, so even before that, I started actually finally teaching yoga. And I still teach at my synagogue once a month, and we practice yoga through a Jewish lens. And all of a sudden, it sort of came to me that this is where I'm meant to go. Still love being a doctor, but that's not all I am. It's not how I define myself anymore. I really just get jonesed when I sit and think about how to theme a yoga class through a Jewish lens, and how all of the theater techniques and training, if I can use that word, I've had over the last year and a half have allowed me to really just open up and know myself better and give more of myself. And yeah, so that kind of brings me to now, right? Hank.
Hey. Cue Hank up.
Yeah, Hank, we got Hank about a year ago. We rescued him. Completely opposite what I thought we wanted or needed in a dog. Wanted a small dog.
Hey.
Doesn't really shed. Low energy, happy to sleep on the couch all day. That's not what we ended up with. But he's come a long way with a lot of training. Come here, Bubba. Hank. He's totally transfixed, which means like he only wants his rawhide right now. He is fixed as well. Hank. Anyway, but this is Hank.
My guy.
This is our guy.
Hank.
Hank. Hey, Bubba.
He's focused.
Hi. Hi. Yeah. You're a good boy. Huh? We're gonna go upstairs, okay? Yeah. Get some water. Huh? Yeah. You wanna give me kisses? Okay. Let's go upstairs. So, as I've thought more and more about this yoga pathway and the teaching through a Jewish lens, I've really had to examine my relationship with my religion. I grew up in what's called a conservative Jewish background, so not really Orthodox, following all the rules, but really familiar with the tenets of Judaism and the basic texts of Judaism and the spirit of Judaism. when I started practicing yoga more, I really realized that there are so many similar themes, and it made me start to think about my spirituality and my relationship with God, and particularly a Jewish God. While the rituals have always been accessible for me, I found that I was feeling a greater sense of spirituality when I would think about how I could embody the text or the teachings of the text, and sort of have come to realize that it's not like you just go and participate. You have to live it every day. And while I don't know that I believe in sort of the traditional view of God in terms of a there and a here, I think that God is sort of all around us and within us, and we are God. And if that's the case, then how can we live that, and how can we share that, and create a community around that, and create a world where everybody sort of understands that we have that potential to really to walk I don't even know how to say it, like to walk as God, right? I guess. I don't know what drove me to become a doctor. I grew up in a medical family, but never felt a calling to it. Somehow I fell into it. As I said before, I guess I was too afraid to expose myself in the theater, so I took the safe route and went to med school. Really liked med school. I loved the challenge of it. I really enjoyed the material. I didn't find it stressful. I found it a little stressful, but generally I really took to it, and loved being a resident. It was hard work. I mean, we would work well over 100 hours a week sometimes. Lots of sleepless nights, sort of what you see on TV, but not quite as clean. Stress really began to build up once I finished my training and became what we call an attending. I didn't even realize it, because you now have so much responsibility for another human being. I mean, we all have responsibilities to each other, and as a parent, you have responsibility towards a child, but this is somebody's health and sometimes somebody's life literally in your hands. And I didn't even know it, but it really was stressful. I'm good at it. I was a great surgeon. But through a series of unfortunate events, I tried to leave my job, and where I was going fell through, and I ended up stepping back out of the OR and just working in the office. And when I had that change, it was like this weight was lifted off of my shoulders without even realizing it. My stress levels just fell, and my enjoyment just increased significantly. This all sort of happened around the same time that I began to really develop my spiritual yoga practice, and I suppose it's all related. And on this journey, I've just felt I've actually become a much better doctor, because I have developed so much more compassion and empathy. I've also now been a patient, and realize how scared people are, and how we can't just think of that person sitting opposite us as a problem with the bladder or a problem with another body part. Like, we have to think about the whole patient. And I think that's something that I have discovered more and more as I have, yes, matured, but also begin to study myself and the yoga texts, the Jewish texts, that taking care of a patient is just not just about keeping them healthy, but their whole well-being. In the last year, I decided that I was going to try to develop what I had been doing at my synagogue as a practice with using the Torah to be a springboard for a yoga practice and try to turn it into a business. Because I thought, if I can connect to my spirituality in this way, and others who have been with me in the practice for these 2 years can do it, then there must be a hunger out there for people who really are not finding God and their own spirituality, and whatever that looks like through traditional ritual, or people who come to the yoga mat and maybe they're Jewish and they can't connect with the Hindu tradition that's sometimes taught. And they're hungry too for some deeper connection to a greater power. And so I decided that I was going to really develop what I'm hoping will be a successful attempt to bring this to more people and to share it with really anybody who wants to jump in. And how it works is that I will look at the weekly Torah portion and study it and find an aspect of it that highlights, I think, our spirituality and our connection to God, and then create a yoga practice based on that theme. The practice is an alignment-based vinyasa class. So we move through a series of poses, always weaving this theme throughout the practice. I think it's pretty fun. I mean, I enjoy it, and the feedback is that it's fun and challenging and helps them touch into a place that they are not finding elsewhere. So my hope really is that we can, that I can sort of spread this and share it with other people, with the hopes that we'll all be able to connect deeper. So I've decided to call this endeavor Shabakti, which is a mishmash, a mashup of the words Shabbat, which is the day of rest, and Bhakti, which means devotion, and it's a form of yoga, which is the study of yoga, not through movement so much as studying text and having devotional practices such as gratitude practices or mantra practices. And one of my favorite things to do, and people probably think I'm crazy on the streets of Philadelphia, is when I walk to and from work, is to actually sing mantras. And that's my way of meditating. I don't always sit on a cushion, hands turned up to God, hands in front in prayer. with my eyes closed, but oftentimes I will walk and meditate and sing all simultaneously. So I have lived a charmed life. I am extraordinarily lucky, and I don't take that for granted. I am incredibly grateful for everything that I have, that I've been given, and that my life really has been incredibly easy compared to the hardships of so many people. I have an unbelievably supportive family. I've got a spouse that is above and beyond supportive of all of the crazy changes that I'm going through. My parents, my kids, who are the first to say, do it, mom, do it, mom. I mean, really, I couldn't get any luckier. So even though I've been taking not yoga classes, I've been taking those 2 theater classes for the last year and change, I have not auditioned for anything yet. I'm still afraid to fail. You're not really allowed to do that as a doctor, and it's a hard thing to be told you're not good enough. So I think that's part of it. I'm juggling this crazy lifestyle, and sure, it's an excuse, but I'm not quite sure how to make it work with everything that I'm still doing. So I know I got to get out there and do it. I don't really have an excuse. I'm just making them. None of them are good. But yeah, I'm coming. I'd like to think I've changed a lot since high school. I mean, I've got a family now and responsibilities. But every once in a while, somebody says to me something like, "You're a real cheerleader type, aren't you?" Or, "You must have been a cheerleader when you were in high school." And I always say, "Sure I was." I mean, maybe some of them mean it like a put down, but it's not the way I take it. Well, I take it like a compliment. Well, like they were saying, "I can see you got a real positive kind of outlook." Oh, of course there's the dumbos who think it's a big joke to have been a cheerleader or a big turn on. Well, one guy even said to me, "I guess you got a lot of practice spreading your legs, didn't you?" Denny, my husband, would have punched him out in a minute. I just turned and walked away. The best fun I ever had was when Molly Baylor, Chrissy Lindell, and I did this routine at the state tournament. The Pirates were down by 10 points. Everyone was getting real discouraged. We came out and did Who's Got the Muscle 16 times. I mean, we were almost dead at the end. But it got everybody all charged up. When the Pirates came from behind and they actually won, I feel like I gave my all, and it really meant something. People say to me, "Oh, Ginny, you're just too full of pep. I can't keep up with you." But what I hate to see is when people get so down in the dumps over nothing. Well, worry, worry, worry. You know their problem? They don't know how to get excited about things. Well, me, ever since my operation, I'm just excited to still be alive. When Denny brought me home from the hospital, I said, if we can beat cancer, we can beat anything. Do you know what he said to me? He gave me this look like, "Who's this crazy woman that I'm married to?" And he said, "You really are a cheerleader, aren't you?" So when I was a kid, I had a recurring nightmare. It was probably my anxiety manifesting before I even knew it. But I just remember this dream where I was asleep in bed and I could feel the mattress being moved underneath me. And I kept telling whoever this was to leave me alone. I was sleeping. And yet I would still feel this pressing up of the mattress. And I'd be like, come on, leave me alone. I'm trying to sleep. I'm trying to sleep. And all of a sudden, a wolf would come out from under the bed and start to come up the side of the bed to, I thought, maybe eat me. That's my fear. And then I remember like backpedaling, being like, no, I'm sorry. Do whatever you want. It's okay. I don't care. It's fine. And then, of course, I would wake up. And I had this dream. I couldn't have been more than 4 or 5, really. And then I like when it first happened, and then I don't know. I had it for years, and then it disappeared. But man, I still remember to this day the way that wolf looks coming out from under the bed.
What do you think that means? Do you have any type of interpretation?
Never thought about interpreting it, other than probably anxiety. And fear, and maybe needing to face down the fear. I don't know. I guess that's what comes to the top of my head now. So my advice, really to anybody, is that it's okay to be afraid. That's what being brave is about. And we all need to accept that we have fears and learn to push past them. And just be kind to yourself, really. Because I think if we can be kind to ourselves, then we recognize that it's okay to have fear and that it's okay to fail and that you can still try. And you should.